Hello everybody, sunglasses time. I have nothing to hide other than my business secrets and bank accounts. It's just the glare today. The sun is shining, the birds are chirping. We are in a remote location in northern Missouri where I keep some of the most uninsured and memorable pieces here, such as this one, which I hope is pertinent to our overarching discussion of what makes a good antique, if we dare to use that ambiguous and potentially misleading term. So what we're looking at here is a very unusual and very memorable 220-year-old work of decorative art, museum quality, and this is a straight sofa, as it is called in French. It's a rather rigid piece, but perhaps it would be more aptly called a throne for four, as this one was likely ordered from the artist from the firm responsible for making Napoleon's Senate throne, Jacob-Desmalter. Okay, so at the risk of being a broken record, if you are new here to this place where we preserve online the most compelling pieces of art furniture from the past that I find, the key message here is really to differentiate between pre-industrial, usually pre-1840 works of art, and everything else that was usually made afterwards that is called an antique. And so that's why, as collectors, even just someone who's trying to decorate, with better discernment, we look at this original timeline from about the Renaissance, the year 1500 to the year 1840, and within that succession of styles, we're looking for the most outstanding examples of pieces from each period. And that's what we happen to be dealing with here. Okay, so it is not a coincidence that I have such great things to say about the pieces that I sell, but there should be some marginal objective truth that you can glean from these sales pitches, as here we are dealing with the most, if not at least one of the most coveted types of empire furniture. These pieces that feature these full-scale winged griffins, or in this case, sphinxes. And this is just one of the most historically expensive, one of the boldest expressions of this powerful empire style that we could encounter. In fact, we'll see a desk of a similar variety with griffins, not sphinxes, but the tails are almost identical, conserved in the Musée Marmottan, wonderful museum in Paris, which is known for its collection of Monet paintings in the basement of all things, but the empire furniture there is very much remarkable. And that piece was made by Bélanger, the master furniture maker, who, of all things, furnished the White House in 1817. Oh, and now let me just interject a quick mention of these wonderful simulated rib cages here on the underbellies, the torsos of these mythological creatures beneath the wings. And that's just such a subtle touch of lifelike sculpture here that we see, that we catch in the right light, where we say, I'll be damned, they even went to the trouble to ripple this animal's torso, giving us the impression that it is breathing, that it has a rib cage, that it is alive. So, in general, as we begin this little tour, we are looking at a very fine empire piece in mahogany veneer, in solid mahogany, and with an oak frame and certain elements in beechwood, probably just to reduce the weight. We can at least say that we have a work of Parisian veneer art in the empire style. Now, the empire style is one that sort of emerges at the end of the 1790s, and it lasts until about 1815. It's not a very long-lived style, but it's a very robust and memorable one. And it is a Neoclassical style, meaning that at the time it was a new expression of ancient classical art. And in the repertoire of European Neoclassicism, it is, let's say, the most monolithic and belligerent expression, as it follows the Louis XVI Neoclassicism, which was more lighthearted and playful. And then at the fall of the Napoleonic Empire, we're going to see that furniture and the decorative arts remain robust, but some of the sharp angles, the starkness, is softened by, let's say, more floral rather than military motifs, and the angles are softened by subtle moldings. So anyway, here we are, situated at the first 15 years of the 19th century, and we see that we're dealing with classicism, straight-sided, symmetrical, very linear style, which is deriving its decor from the ancient civilizations, from classicism, and in this case, not ancient Greece or Rome, but we clearly see that the ancient civilization inspiring the decor on this piece is Egypt. So this Egyptian revival decorative art is in fact a rare subset of empire furniture, which is technically referred to as consulate, after the governmental period between 1799 and 1804, when France was ruled by 3 consuls, one of whom was Napoleon, who in 1804 crowned himself emperor. But anyway, that's how we would truly label this piece. It is within empire, it's technically consulate, and it is of the Egyptian revival variety of consulate furniture. And naturally, it was in vogue around that time because the Egyptian campaign was between 1798 and 1801, when Napoleon blew the nose off the Sphinx. And so, that was sort of the impetus for bringing home all of this Egyptian art and this Egyptian style. And then finally, if we want to get practical, this style, Egyptian revival consulate, was considered to be a masculine one for a man's library or for an office. Now, when it comes to a throne for 4, though, or a straight sofa, where and for whom would this have really been ordered? It certainly wouldn't have been in someone's little office. Pieces like these are actually lapsing over into what's called official furniture, pieces that were much more for their impressive nature and appearance than they were for comfort. And so we typically associate these straight sofas with a long gallery in some sort of quasi-official residence, perhaps even a true government palace, and they would be ordered at least by the pair, if not by the series of 4. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh God, we've got company. It's probably the IRS. Good to see you. So, we see one of these straight sofas conserved in the French Ministry of Culture's National Furniture Reserve, Mobilier National. This is a Restoration period one. But glancing at it, we sort of see that these pieces really kind of convey something more or less official. And this particular piece reminds us of the straight sofa that is currently presented at the Château d'Arouet in France, in the billiards room. And that is another monumental, highly decorative piece here that helps us understand these pieces as things that were meant for beauty, momentary sitting perhaps at parties in these large reception rooms, rather than something that was intended for hours of prolonged lounging. Right here in the driveway. It also would inspire us to really pick our brain, where was this ordered for, who originally ordered it, because naturally this is the kind of piece that was commissioned for some important place that likely has a Wikipedia page. Now, of course, there are some wonderful vellum paper labels inside, the remnants of which are still legible, and it was written with ink and a quill, but of course the juicy details have all but faded away. And so that kind of leaves us at an impasse in terms of figuring out the provenance. But I think it would be safe to say, based on the motifs, based on similar pieces that are conserved in museum collections, that this was ordered for an official government palace. I will say that at the time, Napoleon and his government, they were ordering thousands and thousands of pieces to bolster the national art scene. So if you say that, you had a piece from a Napoleonic palace, you have a piece that was among thousands of pieces that were ordered for all of these different embassies all across Europe, for all of these different residences in France. And so yes, it would be good to know, but it's almost just logical to suppose when you see a piece like this that it did indeed hail from some sort of a place like that. Admittedly, it is my job to figure things like that out, and I haven't really gotten there yet on this piece. But while we're at it, we should come along and take a look at the back, because there are some clues here that also hint to the official nature of this item, not to mention the watermarks where there appears to have been a label applied that has since fallen off. But basically, we see that the piece is sort of exceptionally held together by these early 19th century screws with these porous spherical heads that facilitate, using some sort of a bar to tighten or to loosen them. And yes, that conveys the solidity of this sofa, that it literally must be assembled via large metal joints. But it also evokes the notion that this is a piece that was built to be dismantled. It's so large it needs to be moved, dismantled. But it makes us think of the fact that the Napoleonic Empire was sort of sprawled out, and there was quite a lot of logistics going on with all of this Napoleonic decorative art at the time, as they were having to furnish these government outposts as the empire expanded, and they had all sorts of palaces and all sorts of visual propaganda to install everywhere in the spaces that expressed the power of the government at the time. But anyway, everybody, as we continue to take a look at the back of the piece, We see some of this wonderful dovetailing down here in the beechwood, I believe, which, as I mentioned, reduces weight. Some of the parts back here are oak, and we do see that the beech has suffered a little bit of woodworm damage. It's not unusual. And then there are the typical marks of pencils, as the maker made little notes to himself. But all of this is congruent with early 19th century manufacture. We have these enormous dovetails. We also see the thickness of these veneers, these large veneers, which are so thick they're practically like panels, but nevertheless they are overlaid onto a beechwood frame, thereby making the piece a work of veneer art, although the sphinxes themselves are in solid mahogany, which is just delightful. All of it is in line with this beautifully monumental, full-scale piece, this meuble d'apparat in French, which is an appearance piece. It's different than a domestic work of decorative art, which, however fine, retains a certain level of comfort that these appearance, these more grandiose pieces lose. However, these sort of take the cake when it comes to, their overall impact as a work of art. So like usual, I do hope that taking a closer look at this artifact has interested you, and I do hope that it will help inform your own collecting. And what was I saying? Something about my appreciation and tremendous humility. But I was saying that I would really appreciate it if you would like to support this endeavor of continuing the online period furniture library here by subscribing to the channel. Thank you. I'll not poke my eye out here. Jesus Christ. Got to be able to see in the antique world. It's all about your eye.